much do you know about Judaism?
Slight variation depending on the climate.
Not too much.
Not much.
Not enough.
Absolutely nothing.
Name one tradition besides the bar bat mitzvah.
I mean, there's Shabbat dinner.
I do. I just can't think of anything.
Hanukkah? I can't.
Name one holiday besides Hanukkah.
Yom Kippur?
Rosh Hashanah? Is that a holiday?
Yes. This experience is wildly different from my parents' experiences, especially for my father, where half the kids at his school were Jewish and everyone was invited to one another's bar mitzvahs. But at Mason, things are different. So, do you think that Mason respects its Jewish students?
I think it respects them, but it doesn't, highlight them. You know, they don't point out that they're respecting it. It's just kind of everyone seems on the same level.
I think Mason sort of respects them in a way, but we're like in this neutral state. We're not really acknowledged, but we're not really discriminated against.
It depends on what you mean by Mason. Do you mean the administration or the students?
Either.
I think that the students at Mason, that a majority of them have no idea that there is a Jewish community at Mason. I think that the administration, I know that Ms. Reyes is the head of counseling, she's Jewish, but outside of her, I don't think that the administration really understands or does anything effectual to curb anti-Semitism at Mason.
So I don't think that Mason either respects nor disrespects its Jewish students too much. I know that, as for a fact, in the sophomore class this year, there's about 4 or 5 Jewish students out of a class of about 220, which is pretty similar to the national average. It might be a little bit higher because it's about 2% rather than like 1.4%. And there's not necessarily much discrimination in the Falls Church area, I don't believe. But I see the administration and some of the students just being a little bit more careless, such as when they scheduled Picture Day on Yom Kippur this year. And there's been other events that have been on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, like 2 of the biggest Jewish holidays. And I feel like that was just careless on their part, because I feel like anyone who has a calendar, it's generally on the calendar, so.
Have you ever been discriminated against because you were Jewish?
Yes, I have. Do you want me to elaborate? Yes. Okay, so one of my teachers, my homeroom teacher in 10th grade, was this smallish British lady, and during the morning announcements, it was around Christmas time. In Tashkent, it's illegal. So she kind of alludes to the fact that it's Christmassy, but then she just kind of says it. And I don't really mind too much, but then she's talking about how we should all be in the Christmas spirit and embody Christian beliefs or whatever, something like that. And I just kind of tell her, I go, but what if you don't celebrate Christmas? And she says, stop throwing hypotheticals at me. Of course you celebrate Christmas. And when I point out to her that I don't, this apparently embarrasses her in some way. So later that day, she comes up to me and starts scolding me for embarrassing her in front of the class.
I've lived here most of my life, and I don't think I've ever been discriminated against, but maybe my friends will poke a couple jokes at me, and I'm fine with that.
I mean, I was in class last Tuesday before break, and someone literally said in class, started making fun of the juniors in the class by calling them juniors, and and that's only one of multiple incidents this year, and that have happened. I've been discriminated against myself in sports, and just, yeah.
I personally haven't been discriminated against because I'm Jewish, no.
Have you ever been discriminated against at Mason?
At Mason, no. I don't think I've ever had any experience like that here. Again, it's all been kind of neutral, but the closest thing that would happen would be during Christmas season and everyone goes, oh, Merry Christmas, and if I just lightly go, oh, I don't celebrate that, people are like, well, Merry Christmas anyway.
Have you ever seen anyone else discriminated against because they're Jewish?
Here or just in general?
Anywhere.
Not like directly. Like I haven't witnessed it, but I've heard stories about it.
Not really. I've never seen anyone be discriminated, but then again, I've lived here most of my life.
Yes. Yeah. As I've mentioned before, it's just I've seen people. Yeah, I've seen people put other people down for being Jewish, as well as for being, gay and just and I've also seen just people just be outright anti-Semitic, even if they didn't have a certain Jewish person in mind. Just being, I mean, for example, I heard someone say, you stop being such a Jew, literally in the middle of the cafeteria.
I haven't necessarily seen anyone be physically discriminated against. I've seen people make jokes, but generally not with like a harmful intent. Like they only make it if they're friends with the person, or if they know that they'll take it.